how have you been? And how have you been? You I don't really care about. I haven't seen you in forever. How are you? I'm Pat. You're at Ground Zero Salem. I got some more CDs to talk about, some stuff I've been listening to lately, things that I've purchased in the past several months. You know the story with this. If you're coming here for any length of time, you realize this is what I do most of the time. Take it or leave it. Pile of bunch of metal, a few non-metal titles to keep things interesting. Let's get into it right now. Here's a reissue. Here's something I own on several formats. It's the Hellhammer Apocalyptic Raid CD, the reissue on Noise BMG. This looks a lot like the Celtic Frost reissues. It's got that little digibook kind of thing, kind of creaky. Nicely put together. All that Martin Eric Ain photography that you'll find in the hardcover book, Only Death is Real. A lot of early artwork that you can't see because my camera's freaking out. That looks cool. Let's see if we can get this to focus. If you hear something that sounds like a herd of elephants upstairs, that's my son. He's 4. He weighs about 350 pounds. We're going to look into it, see what the doctor has to say. But yeah, remastered, it sounds pretty good. Like the old issue with the kind of weird looking, almost like Texan or Dia dos Muertos looking art, you know, that version of this. It has the 2 extra songs from the death metal compilation, Revelations of Doom and Messiah. Next up, appropriately enough, the very heavily Hellhammer influenced, at least in the early years, Sheer Terror. This is Drop Dead and Go to Hell. This is a live record recorded, I think, at Coney Island High in New York in '97. Maybe it was CBGB's. I'm not sure. Great sounding live recording. Good, like, greatest hits. Came out not too long after Love Songs for the Unloved, so it's got a bunch of those songs on here. That's a divisive album. I like it. The versions of those songs on this sound better than the album, in my opinion. But it's got all the hits, you know, Just Can't Hate Enough, Roses, Twisting and Turning, Cup of Joe, their cover of Boys Don't Cry. Great stage banter courtesy of Paul, making fun of the crowd. You know how he does it if you're a fan. There's even bonus banter on this with just insult comedy in between song banter. The one from France is my favorite, where he asks the crowd, how come no one's wearing a beret? Fucking awesome. Dead City put this out maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that. Cool label out of New York that does a lot of legit reissues of old New York hardcore bands' shirts, a bunch of which I own. I've been on a bit of a Killing Joke sort of splurge lately. This, I believe, is their 3rd record, Revelations. And so I've only really been into the self-titled and What's This For. They have a massive discography that's very challenging. There's a lot to it. They seem like one of those bands that have mostly good records. I've heard a lot of their fan people saying that they don't have a bad record. This is, I think, their 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. Revelations. They're starting to veer away a little bit from the super sparse, kind of minimalist sound that they have early on. Things are getting a little bit more like fleshed out sound-wise, song-wise on this. It's post-punk. Some call it early industrial, if you're not familiar with the band. Famously, Metallica covered one of their early songs from their self-titled song called The Wait. Big influence on a lot of anarcho-punk and industrial music, stuff like that. Skipped a couple records ahead and got this one, Nighttime. Mostly because this has the hit 80s. That it's kind of a dance hit, kind of a goth club hit. It's a really good song. Dedicated to our brother Paul Raven. Passed away in 2007. He was in Prong for a while, if I'm not mistaken there. But this has 80s and a ton of bonus tracks. Probably B-sides, different versions and stuff like that. This album gets a little bit dancier, you know, a little bit more like electronic, I think. So, cool. Need to sink my teeth into their stuff. That they have a kind of an intimidating discography, but a very worthwhile band. Then we've got Kapia Ardiente. This is a Chilean doom metal band, like traditional kind of epic doom stuff. Super impressive. If you're a fan of Messiah Markolin and Rob Lowe, both of Candlemass, Rob Lowe of Solitude Aeternus, of course, this is definitely up your alley. Same guy who sings for Procession from Chile, I believe. So I have the new one, and I have their first album, Bravery, Truth, and the Endless Darkness here. I also have an EP by them. This is The Siege. This just came out last year. Made a very good friend of mine's best of record for that year, for 2019. So I decided to check it out, and it's just great, sprawling, epic doom metal. It has its moments where it almost gets a little bit slower. It goes into maybe like Warning kind of territory, but also gets kind of rockin' too at certain points. It's great. I mean, very long songs. This one has some outros and intros and interludes. So after that, there's 6 tracks, but there's really like 4 main songs, and this is 4 songs, and they're full-length albums, so very epic. Next up, we've got Humiliation, Battalion, Malaysian band. Very much like a Bolt Thrower worship band, an homage to Bolt Thrower. It's got that mid-pace, punishing, Gatling gun, war-themed thing going on. I first heard these guys, I was given a copy of their split with Decrepitaph. I think Jason Hook gave me that split 7-inch, and I loved it. Turns out they've been around for a grip. They put out a bunch of stuff, and they're awesome. You know, if you're into bands like, what's that band, Chaos Bringer from Russia, I think they're called. If you're into like Bolt Thrower worship, if you like For Victory, Fourth Crusade, like the real crushing mid-tempo Bolt Thrower stuff, absolutely check out Humiliation from Southeast Asia. Then a Stone Cold classic that I did not have on this format. I have it on tape. Tapes can be unreliable, so I picked it up. Harmony Corruption by Napalm Death. Their death metal foray, beginning of their new sound, if you didn't know, involving a couple of American guys from a little band called Terrorizer and a little band called Righteous Pigs. Jesse Pintado from Terrorizer and Mitch Harris from Righteous Pigs. A lot of people bag on the production. I don't mind it so much. When it was first pointed out to me that like it wasn't as good as the production on Utopia Banished, I was like, oh, you're right. Damn. And it was kind of sullied for me, despite the fact that it had a very early place in my heart as a death metal album, one of the first that I'd heard. Now, especially with this sounds really good on CD. It's the FDR remastering treatment. Who knows if that's really all that it's cracked up to be, but it sounds good, this version of it. And all those like Celtic Frost breakdowns are just awesome. It's great. There's some live tracks too, from the ICA at London, in London. Good sounding live songs. Then we've got Scattered Remnants, Procreating Mass Carnage. 90s brutal death metal, late 90s brutal death metal from Massachusetts. Band that's getting name checked a lot recently. I have Destined for Failure, their only full length. This is much along the same lines. It's brutal death, like inspired by Suffocation and the likes, inspired by people from the next state over there, you know, with the climbs and kind of fancy bass work and all that goes into this style of stuff that was happening at the time. But I feel like Massachusetts had sort of like a, also almost kind of like doom metal inspired, maybe not directly influenced, but doom metal inspired sort of gloominess to like artwork aesthetics and lyrical kind of stuff. I feel like Scattered Remnants has that. Eternal Suffering has that too, where there's a lot of themes of like failure and things like that. There's also a song called Anal Birth and a song called Cranial Defilement, so it's still very much in that world as well. But yeah, these guys are fucking great. The brutal death bands from Massachusetts had their own thing going on. They sounded different, markedly so, from Suffocation and Pyrexia and stuff, so it's a lot of stuff worth exploring. It's definitely cool. In the same kind of realm, we've got Cenotaph from Turkey, not to be confused with the one from Mexico. This is Voluptuously Puked Genitals. Yeah, borderline stuff that I wouldn't fuck with because of some of the lyrical content. Pretty gross, but it's got a lot of kind of Carcass-inspired physical mutilation sort of topical stuff going on with it. I was expecting it to be a bit more like slammy and a bit more gurgly, but it's actually like very technically proficient brutal death metal that's pretty engaging song structure wise. I'd heard the band name checked a lot, and I picked this up from Severed along with some other titles that I'll be talking about, and I wasn't let down. This is good. It's two different releases on here: Puked Genital Purulency and Voluptuously Minced. So yeah, early brutal death that's like kind of touching upon gore grind, obviously influenced by Carcass from Turkey. Not even sure when this stuff came out. I believe it was late 90s though. Could be wrong. Isn't available. The information isn't available in front of me, so look it up yourself. Then this only came out a little while ago, just in the past decade, 2014, I believe. Yeah, recorded November 2013 to 2014. This is Possessed Entity with Extermination of Angelic Parasites. Another one that was up on the Pathos Discogs, released by Pathos. And I'd heard on a couple of podcasts, I think the Heavy Hole guys mentioned it. I was like, man, I should pick that up. And it's very like, it's satanic, brutal death metal. And you can hear the influences. You know, I can hear Vital Remains and Deicide and stuff like that on this, as well as like a lot of churning, kind of groove-laden, hard-hitting, brutal elements, very brutal vocals. I'm betting dollars to donuts they're affected in one way or another, but they sound awesome. They're like, kind of sounds like he's singing backwards and underwater, like super demonic, like singing through another dimensional realm. You know, maybe the Happy Hunting Ground or one of those ones from D&D First Edition. Then I've got Hideous Manglius. This is a discography called Shadows That Kill. This band had a 7-inch on, I think it was Thrash Records. They were one of those bands that put out a bunch of 7-inches, kind of like a cult band. I always thought that they were from Europe because of the thrash connection, but they're actually from Pittsburgh, which, you know, as we're learning, might be low rated, like one of the best death metal scenes that was going on in the 90s, and thrash too. You know, Doomwatch, Rotrevor, the list goes on, Eviction, Dream Death, and Mary Bialik from Mythic and several other bands. Scene legend Mary Bialik was on the Heavy Hole podcast and was talking about these guys and how great they were and how they were like death metal, but also like super like kind of like punk crossover as well. And nail on the head. I think there's definitely something for anybody who's into Repulsion and Slaughter. If you're into, you know, newer bands like Necrofilth, just that real like short, quick, abrasive, crazy, just kind of like early grindcore crossover death metal kind of stuff. Even if you like Impetigo, that kind of shit. This band did a lot. It looks like it's kind of hard to say because there's so many songs, but the songs on it are so short. But there's a whole ton of studio tracks. Like it looks like about 30, give or take, and then some live and rehearsal stuff. So you're getting your money's worth there. This is on Gorgiastic Records. No idea when the re-release was. 2014, 2004. It says actually. 2004 was when this was re-released. Love this artwork on here and stuff. Originally, this band was around in the late 80s and early 90s. Definitely up my alley. Severance, Progressions Towards Purgatory. This is a collection of demos and mini CDs and stuff by this Texas band. It's got that photo on the cover, so never seen that before. But yeah, Texas death metal, good shit. Nothing that stands too far out of the pack really, but all of it's competent, well played. The Afterbirth from Infamy demo tape and from the Abysmal Ascent 7-inch that are on here, it was my favorite stuff. I just love the sound of early 90s demo level death metal stuff. Very American, you know. I think like they're listening to their share of Entombed and Morbid Angel as far as influences go. They get a little bit more like slowed down and a little bit more like kind of moshy and brutal for their last couple of releases on here. the Salvation Denied EP, and then there's I think a re-recorded early song on here as well. But yeah, I mean, Texas bands usually deliver a lot of good shit coming out of there. Then I had to pick up this just because I could, because I know it's going to sell out, and I didn't own it on this format. Demigod, Slumber of Sullen Eyes, finished death metal classic. This includes the Unholy Domain demo, which I just bought a bootleg version of not that long ago. But I always felt like Demigod and Convulse reminded me more of kind of like certain American bands than they did out of something from Scandinavia. I feel like something about the tone, the depth of the vocal delivery. They definitely have a sound all their own. It certainly sounds Finnish, but like compared to something like Entombed or even Amorphous, it seems like slightly more like American sounding in certain ways, tonality wise. Atmosphere is all Finland, but maybe I got a tin ear. Then we got Putrified Corpse, Left to Rot, Netherlands band, members of Phlebotomized and Death Squad. Newer band. Yeah, this is like late 80s style death metal. There's elements of it that are sort of Nihilist and Entombed, but kind of kudos for them for not going for a straight up HM2 guitar sound. It's kind of an abrasive guitar tone, but it's a little bit cleaner than that, and I'm not sure if that was a deliberate choice or not, but it was a good choice. Set them apart from the pack. You know, directly influenced by early grindcore, you know, Napalm Death and Repulsion and that kind of stuff, like shorter death metal songs, very gory, very fun, you know, first death record, that sort of thing. Nothing too insanely complex songwriting wise, but very fun. Then we've got The Accused, Nasty Cuts. I talked about this recently. This is all the Nasty Mix stuff that The Accused did, pretty much. Cutting a few songs. There was some overlap on a few of the releases, so they didn't double dip or anything like that. There's a few songs removed from this for, like, just to fit everything on there, I guess, continuity's sake. But it includes most of Grinning Like an Undertaker, the Straight Razor EP, and Splatter Rock. And like I mentioned, it's a cleaned up, more technical Accused. They were looking to score big. It kind of sounds like, I mean, Nasty Mix was a huge label at the time. Like, they were a pretty successful hip-hop label that was owned by Sir Mix-a-Lot. And it sounds like they had high hopes, you know, for the label taking good care of them. And they're pretty diplomatic in the little blurb where they're talking about the history. They don't, like, trash anybody or anything like that, but sounds like things went south in the label. Well, people never talk about Nasty Mix nowadays, so there you go. But yeah, it's still crossover thrash, leaning a little bit more towards like almost a straight up thrash metal thing. The main thing keeping it crossover is Blaine's vocals. Then, going on a bit of a dive with Sabotage. I've had Dungeons Are Calling for ages on vinyl. I picked it up used at a record store in my hometown that, you know, is one of those like musty bookstores that had a ton of vinyl records, but mostly like Olivia Newton-John and shit like that. And I would just be bored and just dig all day, because that's what you used to do. pre Discogs, I guess. But I found it for like $6 and I really liked it. I think I got Gravedigger's Heavy Metal Breakdown from the same place, and that was like the only things that I found there. But anyway, I love that record. Just great, like, early heavy metal stuff. And there was that Sabotage, and then there was the Sabotage that I knew of that did a rock opera, which is something I would avoid like the plague. Still would, actually. So I know that they had like a lot of like cool early kind of power metal, kind of speed metal sort of stuff, you know, in the same vein as bands like Fate's Warning and shit like that. And I picked up Sirens. I talked about that recently. First side's like real kick-ass heavy metal. There's some more like mid-tempo rockers on the other side that, to my, you know, unsophisticated ear, almost kind of sounded close to like a little bit more of like a butt rock kind of thing. I've been listening to that tape, and the B-side's been growing on me to where like I feel like there's only like one or two songs that are verging on butt rock. But I decided to pick up the CD that had Dungeons Are Calling and Sirens on it, just to have them all one disc, digital quality. The tape gets a little rough in spots. I also got Power of the Night and Hall of the Mountain King. They haven't arrived yet, but fun band to dive in on. I remember Gutter Ballet. One of my best friends that was into metal as a kid was like really into that record, and me being like, nah. So we'll see how far I get into the Sabotage discography before I decide it's a bridge too far. But then we've got a couple of cult CDs. These were a few holes to fill for me. Two pretty different eras of the cult. I believe, if I'm not wrong, Dreamtime was the first one they did after they changed their name from Death Cult. Before that, Southern Death Cult. Still very much like a post-punk, almost kind of goth band at this stage. Ian Astbury's vocals are still that awesome, like, kind of croon that he kind of maintained the whole time. I think this record's great. Very new romantic looking on this, you know. It's a band that, like, from this on through, well, this, Sonic Temple, I really like everything. I love Electric. It's, I think that's Rick Rubin produced. If not, it's Bob Rock, because he produced this one. Pretty sure it's Rick Rubin. At any rate, I like that record a lot. It's like an AC/DC record with a crooner singing. It's a lot of fun. This one, you know, there's a little bit more going on as far as like influences. It's not just straight up like Back in Black. You know, there's a little bit more like kind of epic songwriting on it. There's some really great leads. Billy Duffy's a sick guitarist. One of those bands where like they were on all the time on MTV when I was a kid and on Headbangers Ball, and like I was like, I fucking hate this, but there's something about this I like, and I didn't give it a shot till like maybe, I don't know, my mid-20s, and I was like, oh, this is like Danzig, but without all the songs about wolves and demons and stuff. It's just more songs about, I don't even know, Edie, about her, about a fire woman, about a train made out of medicine, you know, topics like that. Really fucking good, though. All right, back into brutal shit. We've got Terror Razor, Abysmal Hymns of Disgust. Terror Razor. So you can maybe imagine what this band's paying tribute to. Although I will say, like, I'd heard things about these guys, heard about this record, and I was expecting it to be more of a straight up World Downfall kind of clone. Definitely, they like World Downfall for sure, but it almost sounds like a death metal, like a straight up death metal band, like an old one, like a More Sound Studios death metal band. I know that World Downfall was produced there too, so I'm really muddying the waters here. But it sounds like a Death or Obituary or Pestilence kind of band covering World Downfall, if that makes any sense to you. Very good, mixed and mastered by Joel Grind. Fun grindcore record with like kind of death metal tinges. In a similar vein, we have Desensitized, Virus of Violence. This is, again, like kind of death grind stuff. It has a member of God dethroned. I believe it's Susan. So they're from the Netherlands. And it's, yeah, in a lot of ways it kind of reminds me of Misery Index. You know, it's sort of got brutal death metal elements to it, but it's very political, kind of very grindcore and hardcore informed, music-wise and lyrically. Yeah, there's a lot of songs on it, you know. Reasonable song lengths, nothing over 3 minutes, so they keep it short, keep it quick and to the point. Up next, Chemical Breath, Beyond Reality and Brutal Violation demos compilation, 2 demos. I don't think I talked about this yet. I talked about the full length. I got this like a few days after. If I'm double dipping, I apologize. It's Chemical Breath. They're fucking good. They were a band I had no idea about until very recently that were around in the early 90s. Also a European band. Thrashy, technical death metal stuff. Very much in the vein of Pestilence and like death, human era kind of stuff. Super good. Check it out. Watchmaker. Kill fucking everyone. So, early to mid 2000s Willow Tip stuff. The bass player from this band was my boss at Newberry Comics. He was a hell of a guy. His name's Nick. I heard about these guys a lot, obviously, because I worked with one of their members. I also heard a lot about them in the kind of Hellfest, not the one in France, the one that was in my hometown, where there was a lot of like the metalcore of the day, but there was a lot of people who were, as a result of that, interested in a lot of like technical grind and death metal stuff. There were bands like Circle of Dead Children, Calabas, Commit Suicide, that whole era of stuff. Creationist Crucifixion, you know, all these bands that were like very, very technically adept metal bands that were kind of shredders, kind of like a little bit more forward thinking lyrically, had some ties to the metal scene, but things were kind of bleeding over and merging at that point. Watchmaker was part of that. Very black metal approach to their modern at the time, like grindy death metal stuff, technical stuff. Like there's very like vocally certainly very black metal sounding, kind of shrieky black metal vocals, but there's also like kind of an ominous sort of blackened, not to use the term blackened too much because it's something that you refer to when you're talking about tilapia, but yeah, sort of a blackened kind of atmosphere that I really like. Then gift from Kevin, Full Metal Ginger, sent me a few things. I sent him a mixtape. He talked about that recently on an update. Glad you enjoyed it. This is Mortal Decay's Cadaver Art. It came out around 2006. It's their third full length, I think. On Unique Leader, proprietor of that style of brutal death metal. I always was kind of like fascinated by Mortal Decay. You know, getting into this stuff not that long ago, a lot of this like brutal death metal. Because to me, they don't sound that, like, they don't have a lot of the same token elements as, like, say, Suffocation, Dying Fetus, all that kind of slammy stuff. Like, they go into those bits here and there, but there's a lot of, like, moody, just, like, straight-up foreboding, like, traditional death metal stuff in their sound. I know their early vocalist there did a lot. I think his last name's Payon. That did a lot of like the real guttural kind of vocals. And the guy that they got, Kelly something, the guy they got from Death Rune after that, also his delivery was like pretty brutal. This guy sounds like a pretty much like straight up like death metal vocalist to me, maybe a little bit more guttural. But it's a great solid record. The production's perfect on it. You know, I'm picky about when the drums start sounding too plastic or too clicky, and only slightly so on this. You know, it's a really well executed death metal record overall, regardless of what little pocket of death metal you might appreciate. Very good. Kevin also sent me this, and we'll go into a little black metal segment here. This is Shroud of Satan of Evil Descent on Saul Records, came out in 2018. This is just straight up, to me, this is just straight up second wave black metal. You know, most of the stuff like that sounds like Norwegian stuff to me. I could be misinformed, or, you know, maybe it sounds more Polish or sounds more like American stuff. I don't know it well enough, the genre well enough. Abrasive, like fairly raw, but not like the modern day Portuguese and raw black metal stuff, but pretty stripped down. Some good, you know, longer passages, some kind of like more drawn out, almost melodic kind of stuff going on. Really good. In a similar vein, we have Undercroft from Michigan. Picked this up from the Bind Rune distro when I ordered some stuff from Marty. This band's also great. I know one or two of the members are friends of Marty's. This is, I guess, originally was a demo. So it's basically an EP, CD EP. Also very raw, but not too raw, you know. Not raw for the sake of being raw, comes with a sticker. Scathing, like icy black metal stuff. Great riffs though, and there's like a certain kind of drumming style that gets kind of punkish. It's got that 1-2-1-2 kind of thing that I like. So does this. This is Beheaded Lamb, A Grave to This World. Picked this up from the Bind Room distro as well. This band is from Europe. I don't remember where. I think Spain. Unfortunately with this, I like the music. You know, it's kind of more the kind of Iljarn, you know, maybe even Bonal, but a little bit more technical and, you know, fleshed out than that stuff. You know, it's very basic, raw, fucking black metal stuff, but the vocals kill it for me. You know, they have that depressive, sad boy fucking style and delivery where it sounds like the teenager character from The Simpsons, like, getting poked with a hot fork. I'm just, you know, the kind of almost like whining, woe is me kind of black metal vocal delivery I'm not into. Sounds like a dude being tortured, but the dude's really not putting on his bravest face while it's happening. I don't know how else to describe it. This is No Rest for the Dead, The End of Grace, The End of Space. So I bought this because Marty sent me a bunch of tapes, talked about that recently, and he sent their demo, and I was like, fuck, this is so good. I need to get the full length. And I wasn't disappointed. It's not as grindcore as the 4-song demo. They definitely stretch their legs and go into a lot of like progressive and psych territory, stoner rock, still lapsing into like vicious grindcore here and there. There's even parts that are like 70s like funk. It's really fucking cool. Really fun listen. It's not... The thing about it too is that it all flows well too. It doesn't feel like a kitchen sink kind of writing approach, which I really like. But this band's from Japan. They were on Deaf American. This came out some point in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's great. Here's a reissue of one of my favorite records ever, Winters Into Darkness. I already owned it on vinyl, but it also includes the Eternal Frost EP. I think it was originally a demo. Released by Spart Records, who always do a great job with everything they put out. The booklet, they must have talked to Southern Lord, who did the last reissue, because the booklet pretty much includes everything that's in the booklet for the LP reissue in terms of the old flyers and stuff, from what I remember. But yeah, Winter was just a special band. I mean, if you don't know their sound, they were an early death doom band that had this really stark, crawling, heavy as fuck kind of approach, you know, more or less death metal vocals, but you could tell they were fans of and students of Celtic Frost, like a lot of people of note were at the time, but also were buddies with bands like Nausea from New York. You know, no mistake that they were tight with Sorrow, who had a similar kind of approach to like slower death metal that had sort of a political bent. All kinds of interesting stuff in here with flyers of bands that they played with, like Postmortem. Show with Ripping Corpse, would have liked to have seen that. We've got a flyer with Winter in the Schism font, which is cool. Here we go. Nausea and the Radix. The Radix were a great anti-racist oi band that were around at the time. Winter with Nausea and Slaughter. Not sure if that's the same Slaughter from Canada, but I'd like to think so. Nah, it must be. I don't think Squatter Rot would have put on Slaughter, but I could be wrong. Who knows? That show. Yeah, these flyers are just fun to flip through, man. Apparition, which was Sorrow before they were Sorrow. That 7-inch rips. Devastation and Death. Winter. Sanctus. Now I want to find Sanctus, see if they have any recordings. Big Rock Against Racism thing there with tons of bands. Nausea, the Radix, Fleg Camp. Fleg Camp were supposed to play the first show I ever went to. On and on and on. Oi Polloi. What a cool gig. Anyways, yeah, really nice reissue. Super important band. One of my favorites. Had to have it. Then we've got Vader, Litany, another band that I've been gingerly exploring. One of the many that missed my radar back in the day. I got Ultimate Incantation because I figured that was a place to start. And then I did a little reading and I was like, okay, a lot of people talk about Litany. Litany's really good. Beginning of it, when it starts to kick off, there's like the drums. Here's me with drums again, but the drums start to do this thing where it almost sounds like they're taking off in like a electronica, like dance EDM kind of way, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? It goes into like a like what and then it's just death metal. I don't know why that is. I don't know what their choice was with the drums that like made them sound like that just in that beginning part. But I was like, what the fuck? This sucks. And then the rest of it's awesome. It's death metal. It's got the intensity, a lot of it, of like Rain and Blood. Like it's just a go for the throat, nonstop energy, very fast death metal record. And the drums sound like Gatling guns, and like they're a bit much, but I still dig it. But just like that takeoff part in the beginning, I was like, what the fuck? Weird choice. Then we've got to round things out, bathory stuff. There's bathory stuff I didn't own. I'm a huge fan of the first four. The Jubileum 1 and 2 comps were very instrumental for me getting into lots of music, but I never owned any of these, and I decided it was time to pick them up. So I got Hammerheart. I knew the songs from Hammerheart off those comps for years. Whole album I didn't own. Bridging the gap into the Viking era. Blood, Fire, Death got it started, but this is the straight up like acoustic strumming. A lot more melodic, although the vocals aren't quite singy yet. It's a great record, very good. Then this Requiem record, which was like a return to form thrash record. A lot of people complain about the drum machine, drum sound, whatever's going on with the drums. It's a bit distracting, but once you really start to adjust to how it sounds and you can get over it, if you can get over it, the music's awesome. It's just vicious fucking thrash. Kind of going back to the very early stuff, but a little bit more technical. And then Blood on Ice, which is probably the finest record from the Viking era. Other people have said that. I didn't want to believe it because I thought Twilight's really good. The songs that I knew from Hammerheart were great, but this is pretty awesome. Especially One-Eyed Old Man, which is like an up-tempo kind of rocker sort of song that you listen to that and you listen to the Massachusetts band Battle Ruins and you're like, oh, I see where they got like a ton of their influence from. Then I got this Burnin' Leather compilation. This is a CD and 7-inch style packaging with a ton of stuff in it. This is all rare tracks. A bunch of them are on the Jubileum comps. There's also, I think it's called Satan is My Master, a tape comp that's out there floating about. I got a copy from Hell's. But a lot of the same songs. This is a pretty comprehensive unreleased songs compilation of everything that is outside of the records. You got Rider at the Gate of Dawn, Crawl to Your Cross, Sacrifice, You Don't Move Me, I Don't Give a Fuck, Return of Darkness and Evil, Burnin' Leather, Die in Fire, Satan My Master, In Nomine Satanis, Resolution, Greed, not familiar with that one, Witchcraft, Valhalla, Genocide, Kronos Attack, and then a bunch of covers. God Save the Queen, War Pigs, Ace of Spades, Black Diamond, Deuce, and a Beatles cover. I don't know if you need the end of that so much, but a bunch of tracks on here, especially Burnin' Leather, great song. Die in Fire, awesome song. You can really see how, like, dude created second wave black metal all by himself. So, and it comes with a fold-out poster. Nothing really too exciting, but also not too big to fold out, so why not? And Breathing Fire, a bunch of great liner notes, a sticker. I think that's it. Pretty nice packaging. I just I saw it up on Amazon and I was like, you know what? I love this stuff. I'd like to have a little bit more. There's some songs that aren't on the Jubileum comp, so I went for it. And this turned out to be way fucking longer than I thought it would be. What are you gonna do? Everybody have a good week.